everyone is growing, changing, and evolving, even you. From the student nurse to the baby nurse, the veteran nurse, off the bedside and into entrepreneurship, you have arrived and you have evolved. This is your host, Keisha, and welcome back to the Evolve Nurse Podcast. Today we have nurse turned lawyer, Miss Irnise Williams, aka Your Nurse Lawyer on Instagram. She is a change maker in the nursing community, creating space for us to educate ourselves on how to be compliant as nurses, but also keeps us up to date on nurse world topics in real time. When I tell you she doesn't miss a beat, she catches everything. A nurse, a lawyer, a mom, an influencer. She is so multifaceted and inspirational. Welcome to the Evolve Nurse Podcast, Miss Irnise.
Thank you so much for having me. What a nice intro.
You are so welcome. Thank you for agreeing to come onto this podcast. So, normally, what we like to do on here is we start by talking about the beginning, what the initial start of your nursing career, but you are now a lawyer. So, did you initially want to be a lawyer?
Yeah, so initially I wanted to be a physician, but I felt that going to nursing school would ensure that if I didn't follow through with being a physician, I would always have some type of career or a job. I didn't want to be like a biology major or a pre-med major. And then, you get halfway through and you realize that's not what you want to do. And then you kind of are just trying to figure it out. So I said, if I do nursing and then I want to continue, at least I have a strong foundation. Got into nursing, fell in love with it. It was an amazing career. My internships, my clinicals, my professors, like I really did love the experience. Of course, like nursing school is hard. My hair fell out, like all of the stress. I was up driving an hour and a half to go to clinicals. So, all of the struggles, but overall, I really did enjoy nursing school and I enjoyed being a nurse. The reason that I even went back to school was one, I feel like everybody was going back to school for something. At that time, a lot of people were getting into becoming a CRNA. I started my career in the operating room and I knew I didn't want to stay there. So that wasn't a good option for me. Some people were becoming nurse practitioners, but I just didn't understand the growth, opportunities was in that career because it was still fairly new. Like there were people who had been nurse practitioners for a while, but there weren't tons of them. And so I wasn't really, I didn't consider that as an option. And so I wanted to still be working in healthcare in some type of way, but also trying to create change. And so I felt law school was the better option. I also considered getting a public health degree, but again, I couldn't figure out how to use that to create opportunities or jobs or things like that without having to get a PhD. So law school was an option about 3 years into my career. I worked as a nurse here and there throughout law school. And then after law school, I couldn't find a job. I didn't pass the bar the first time and I was just trying to figure my life out. I had a small child, I was married, we had a house. So I just got back into nursing. Nursing was always if
Go to.
everything else in life fails, I know that I can always get a job. And so that's kind of what nursing has kind of solved for me. And then, years passed and I hadn't been using my law degree. I retook the bar and I passed, and I still had a hard time breaking into the industry. So I decided to do my own thing and start building my business in 2017.
Okay. So, did you say that nursing was a second career for you?
No, I started. So I went to nursing school right out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Howard for undergrad and to a BSM program. And then I went to law school, but I kind of just always kept my license active,
Mm-hmm.
and then worked, over since like I think my last job in nursing was in 2021.
Okay. So, you said that your hair was falling out. It
Oh,
was a stressful time in nursing
very
school.
stressful. Yeah.
So, let's dive into the struggles that nursing school has because we have a lot of listeners who are new nurses and they
Yeah.
think that, you know, it's time to give up. They want to give up on themselves. And we know because we've made it through to the other side, having a consistent job, being able to go anywhere that we want to go and make money, even if we want to try a second career.
Yeah.
They are out here giving up on themselves. And like you said, your hair was falling out. I was losing my memory.
hmm I
What
think,
ways did you
yeah.
persevere through that?
So I do think there are elements and aspects of nursing school that are just not realistic and aren't fair, right?
Mhm.
I think I was a very young person, no responsibilities. I didn't have any children or anything like that, and it was so hard. And I had classmates who were a lot older than I was, who were working other jobs or in the military or had families, and it was a struggle for them as well. And so I think being in nursing school but having a lot of strong relationships. So I had, my core group of friends that kind of I matriculated with through into nursing school. I had a friend who I grew up with I'm from Connecticut, and she was there, and we were in the program together. And it's like, we just kind of had to really stick very close to each other so that we could kind of survive, right? I think that there are some people who are great test takers, and there are some people who are great studiers, and some people who are great listeners, and you just kind of have to create your community. And if you don't have that because people have non-traditional nursing school experiences, you have to just believe in yourself enough to know that on the other side of this is what you desire. I know that nursing school is hard and they put a lot of roadblocks in front of you. They don't make it easy. They may say things that are very negative about your journey and your future, and none of it's true. No one can determine where you're going or what you're doing or your NCLEX exam outcomes or your future prospective job outcomes. Like none of that can be determined by your clinical experience. Like I am an amazing nurse, but like if you looked at my test scores or my grades, they weren't that great. Like I was even surprised that I got the jobs that I got because, my nursing professors were like, your grades aren't that great. And so you're not going to get a job in, any specialty and X, Y, and like people just say things that aren't true. And so you have to use and leverage everything that you have within yourself and again within your community to just push forward, to do the best that you can, and then to take on opportunities that help you look better. So, my first opportunity wasn't at the greatest facility, but I did really well there. So, when I was ready to go to a bigger internship and a bigger opportunity, I had people who were rooting for me and who were vouching for me and supported me. And then once I got, my first big job, which was working at Hopkins, it was like, there was nothing else anyone could say to me. Grades didn't matter. I now
Mhm.
had one of the best hospitals in the world on my resume. So you kind of just have to figure out how to push through, like nursing school for me was like, there was no backup plan. There was no other
Mhm.
option. So no matter what my grades were, no matter what was being said to me, I was like, I just got to make it to the end of that. I failed my first class. It was a prerequisite. I can't remember if it was pharmacology or what. And I cried. I mean, I acted a fool. Like, I had never failed anything in my life. So I was like, what is this and what am I supposed to do? And I'm in school and I'm paying for it myself. So like what does that mean? And that year that I had to sit out to wait to for the class to be offered again was the best year of my collegiate life. Like I had so much fun. I didn't have stress. I was only taking one hard class, so I took all these other fun classes. I met so many other people. I got to do everything that everybody else was doing because I didn't have to study all day. And it was the best
Mhm.
experience of my life. And so sometimes the detours and the things that slow us down and push us back and make you a fifth year senior and all those kind of things, like it seems like negative in the end. But overall, like I can't even think about how that has impacted me other than like I had a great experience. It wasn't a negative thing that I was in college for 5 years.
Yes, I mean, similar to your stories, the same thing happened to me. I had to sit out a semester. Well, I really didn't. I just ended up picking up like African American studies.
Hmm.
And one of my friends, she actually took the class with me and we had a great time.
Yeah.
But when I tell you when you fail that first class
Ooh.
and to the listeners who have failed that first class, you know the
Hmm.
feeling of feeling like your life is ending.
Why is this so heavy? Like the most dramatic. Life is over,
Life
and
is over for
it's
me, there's
over.
nothing else, and that's because we put so much time, effort, and energy into getting our nursing degree that we don't even see other things that we could do.
Right.
We are so tunnel vision at that time. We're
Mhm.
like, "This is all I can do. It's no plan A, B, C, or D. It's just plan A, and plan A better
Mhm.
work."
Yeah, and that's hard. I think I understand as, a American citizen, someone who started school. very young that when you fail, it sucks and it's a setback. And I do understand, like, if you are an immigrant or you're undocumented and you're in school, or there's like just so many complexities that comes with being a nursing student, it does feel like life is going to end. But I promise you, like, there are just so many other options and opportunities that you can explore that I think we just have to take into consideration. Sometimes it is not easy. And I don't even think that, I'm not saying that you shouldn't fail, because I do want competent nurses, but sometimes they hold grades over your head, or tests or
Mhm.
exams or courses over your head, and then you get into the profession, you're like, "Come on. It wasn't that serious." Like, it just wasn't, right?
Right.
Being a competent nurse has nothing to do with you acing your exams. I know people who did extremely well in their nursing programs and could barely hold a patient's hand. Like, they could barely draw blood. They could barely lean into the skills that made them a good nurse. And so I don't know how we change the culture of that, but those who are listening and really invested in their future, you got to just look beyond that. I think that's what it is. Like, you can't sit in the moment. You got to be like, okay, the future is and will be brighter once I get on the other side of this. I'm just going to fight to get that 70 or 75 or whatever
Mhm.
that cutoff grade is, and then I can figure the rest out later.
Look, and when that final comes, get your calculator out and figure out
Yes.
what you gotta make.
Listen, that is the worst feeling to have, but sometimes that's what you gotta do to get to where you need to go. And those sometimes the questions be wrong. Like, honestly, I was in nurse school, like, the question didn't even make sense. So when we would review the question sometimes, I'm like, I know y'all not serious. Like, y'all really gave us a question with two right answers, and now you're trying to tell me that I'm wrong. Like, all of the drama that
And you
nursing
pulling out your
school.
books and you fighting with the teachers, like,
Yes.
it was so much, and you know what? I really don't know how we change the culture unless we actually become teachers,
Yeah.
because a lot of those teachers are the nurses who eat their young.
Yep. Exactly. And I think, like I said, I don't know how we necessarily shift the culture, because the culture of nursing is so deeply embedded in the curriculum and the way that
Mhm,
nursing school is structured and the way that new nursing residency programs are structured, that it is hard to fight the monster that is negativity and, eating our young, and like just putting so much pressure on nurses, because being a nurse now, like, after 15, 16 years, I look back and I'm like, all of that stress that you were pushing on me and putting on me didn't result in anything. Like, it did not make me a better nurse. I think that they think by having this negative talk that it's going to make you be the best nurse possible. It
mhm.
really, for most people, it doesn't really work, right? Or it makes people so paranoid that they make even more mistakes. And so, I think that as a new generation enters into the profession, which is really hard because a lot of them are entering and leaving just as quickly, but as new people enter into the profession and stay, you have to begin to speak up to the negative aspects of the culture and shift that on your units, within your programs and residencies and preceptorships and clinicals, and then eventually in nursing schools. Like, I think hopefully this old school methodology will die out.
I hope so as well, because
Yeah.
it is very traumatic. Nursing school is a traumatic experience for a lot of people. For the
Yes.
people that it's not traumatic for, a lot of those people, they're pushed through the program. Like, I've seen
Hmm.
experiences where teachers are giving students study guides so that they can pass, but they
Mm.
push for us to fail.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's so many different aspects of nursing school
Yeah.
that will make you feel like you want to give up and you want to quit. But we need more nurses who not only look like us, but care about patients like we care, that actually want to make a difference.
Exactly, right? You're passing people who just want to get into the profession, but then failing people who are really passionate about the work. That's crazy. That's crazy.
It is so crazy.
Hmm.
But I do have a question
Yeah.
about nursing school. Do
Hmm.
you feel like med surge is the starting point for all nurses?
No, I didn't start in med-surg, and I don't know if that was something that maybe my nursing professor said that, but because a lot of our clinical instructors had various backgrounds, like started in psychiatry or started in L&D or in other specialties, I think we got such a window into what a career looks like if you don't start in med surg
Mhm.
that that wasn't something that was forced upon us. A lot of us went into specialties and into other, unique situations that weren't typical. After nursing school, I don't think that med surg is necessary. Like I said, I started in the OR, but I do think that if you struggle with the confidence of being a nurse, like,
Mhm.
some people just aren't great at communication or aren't great at managing their time, that jumping right into a specialty like the ICU or the CVICU or the NICU or PICU may be even more difficult than starting in a place where you have a little bit more time, a little bit less pressure, even though you have more patients, right? So, no, I don't think that it's necessary or required. I just hate to see people struggle unnecessarily, be on orientation for 9 to 12 months because they can't get the basics when they
Mhm.
could have started on a med surg unit for 6 months and then transferred to an ICU position once they had like just some stronger skills. So, I see people, most major hospitals have residency programs that allow new nurses to start in any unit.
Mhm.
And I think that that's you go where your heart is because like I thought I wanted to be a pediatric nurse and thank God I didn't because when I went on my first rotation in clinical I was like, oh, it's too much crying, it's too much noise, they hollering, I got to hold the baby down, like this is too much. So I think that if you're unsure of what you want to do, med surg is a great place to start. If you feel like you want to get your skills up, it's a great place to start. But the whole old you should start in med surg is like I'm surprised people even still say that.
Very dated, but trust
Yeah.
me, they are still saying it all the
Weird.
time.
Mhm.
So, I did a nurse residency as well
Mhm.
as a nurse externship while I was still in school.
Mhm.
But a lot of students don't know that they have opportunities to go to nurse externships where you can get paid while
Yes.
you're still in nursing school and you can
Mhm.
get all the experience that you can get. So,
Mhm.
while I was in nursing school, I actually did rotate through the ED. I did med surge for a little while. I did home health. I did the OR. And that opens up avenues for you to see what you like and what you
Yes.
do.
Exactly. I agree. I think that people like when I had the opportunity to become a CNA because, I think what after the first year you
Mhm.
automatically qualify for a CNA license. I immediately went and got a job because I wanted to see what working on the floor was like. And I knew then I did not want to work.
Not
And I was on
me.
I wasn't even on the med surg floor. I was on an orthopedic unit. And I was like, oh my God, this is too much. Like I don't want to be on the floor. So I knew then I wanted to go into the ER or the OR or somewhere specific because I utilized my license to do that. And then I did a nurse externship that got me into the OR that exposed me to the OR as a student and I got really really good before I then got on my 6 month nurse residency once I graduated. So I was able to kind of push through a lot faster because I had already been working there for a year and a half before, I started as a nurse. And so I think that people should leverage that. I know that there are a lot of accelerated programs, there are a lot of BS, bachelor to NP programs, but within those programs, the moment that you have access to that license, whether it's a CNA or if it's an LPN or RN license, take advantage of that so that you can get the experience that you need to decide what your best next step is instead of going somewhere and being unhappy.
Yes, I was definitely going to ask you how you decided to go to the OR because I too am an OR nurse. And
Yes.
I just transferred into pediatrics
Oh my goodness.
and I miss the adults.
Really?
Yes, I miss the adults just a little bit, just a little
I
bit.
mean, my thing is with what I realized with pediatrics that I was gonna have to be more sensitive and have conversations that were a little bit more gentle than my personality could handle. I'm not a coddler. Like my kids, I don't really give them that opportunity to be like, oh, my kid left his project at home today. I was like, bruh, like what is going on? Like I'm just not that type of person. And so being in pediatrics, you do have to be a little bit more patient and more understanding. And then, of course, empathy for the parents. And it was just more than my emotional capacity could handle.
Mhm.
With adults, I'm like, take this medication or when I come back, it's gonna be a problem. And they'll laugh and joke and they may take half the medications and then I gotta sit there for them to take like I feel like I could build a rapport and a relationship with my adult
Mhm.
patients a lot faster than you can who with a child who's already afraid and has
Mhm.
anxiety and is in a situation that don't deserve to be in. Like it is just so many layers to being in pediatrics, but yeah, I could definitely see that I was not ready for that world at all. So I'm definitely glad I chose adults, because I would not have been a good pediatric nurse.
So, um, yeah, it has become like I like it,
Yeah.
but it is I am a coddler though. Like
Oh,
I
that's
love
good.
people, I'm very patient,
Ah,
but I miss my adult patients because I felt like I had more of an impact for them.
yeah. Yeah. I think with you can see the immediate impact. I think with pediatrics, the impact is so much later because they got to
Mhm.
heal and reassess and realign and readjust. And then eventually they're like, oh, I do miss my nurse who did this or took care of me. I think those stories
Mhm.
definitely come later down the line. But that impact is something I think for me, that immediate satisfaction helped keep me in nursing because I needed that to like fuel me after someone just
Mhm.
cursed me out or, a
Yeah.
doctor just told me that like I made a mistake or something. So I definitely could see that being a challenge for someone who likes to just see the work and see the results of their work pretty quickly.
So I love when nursing is a stepping stone into a greater purpose. So what has nursing done for you as a person, as an entrepreneur? Because I know you have your own business.
Yeah.
What has nursing done for you? Because I want our listeners to know that you don't just have to stop at nursing. Anything
Mhm.
that you want to achieve that can tag along with nursing, you can do that.
Yeah, so I think that nursing needs a marketing makeover. I think that
Mhm.
the world of nursing is definitely controlled by people who aren't nurses. And so people have been able, whether it's the media or physicians or other lobbyists, have been able to determine and delegate how we are
Mhm.
treated, how we are discussed in the media. Like I was gonna have a media interview with like Good Morning America, and they called me and they were asking me some questions, and she was like, "Nurses don't own businesses." I'm like, "What are you talking
Mhm.
about?" Like, and she was like, "Well, I'm not gonna interview you because you're taking nurses away from the bedside." I'm like, "That is the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life." Like,
Oh
there are
wow.
millions of nurses in this country, and me having a social media presence does not take away. People were already leaving the bedside, right? And
Mhm.
so she just could not understand the role of a nurse and like the different things that nurses could do, like, and just had never heard of it. And so I think that nurses have to be their own spokesperson. You have to build your own brand outside of the work you do every day. And it doesn't mean you have to be a content creator or have a social media platform, but you should be leveraging places like LinkedIn to be able to build out who you are beyond the work that you do. So, what are your passions? What do you do outside of working at the bedside or, inpatient care? What are your future plans and your future goals and what are your interests, right? That is the power of social media and social media platforms and blogs and websites is to be able to tell your own story. And I think that that is something that nurses have struggled with. We've allowed
Mhm.
people to box us in this very narrow meaning and definition of who we are and what we do. And when we try to go after certain opportunities, we don't know how to market ourselves. And I think if more nurses were marketing themselves publicly as people who are not just there to help take care of patients, but we are information, data managers, right? Like all of this information that we're collecting is going into an electronic medical record. We are deciphering it, we are analyzing it, we're making decisions based off of it. We're taking that information, translating it for the patient and the family, and then sending them home with additional education.
Mhm.
That part of nursing is so overlooked because people just see us as passing pills and following doctor's orders and sitting at the desk, right? They don't even look at the amount of data that we have to take in every single day, whether it's from x-ray, is it from radiology, is it from the cardi, they just got an echo and we got to send it to the doctor so they can say something, or this is abnormal, or someone has a 5% EF, like all of those different, that data, no, most people couldn't handle that. And we take all of that in and we make our decisions and we prioritize and we align our daily goals for ourselves and our patients based on that data. We don't talk about that enough. We don't market that part of us enough. And so when nurses become informaticists and they get additional degrees or they go into tech, it's very easy for them because they've already had this experience with electronic medical records and other technical solutions, and so many other elements of our work are embedded in the external tech world, or whether it's policy or the law, like we are already doing it, but we just don't market ourselves. And so as more conversations about what the role of a nurse is and what nurses should be able to do comes out, we have to position ourselves to make sure that it's accurate and
Mhm.
fully representative of all of who we are and not just like a little bit. And so for me, what I tell people is I've been able to take my nursing career and leverage that as a lawyer to say, I'm an expert, right? I'm not an expert because I went to school. I'm an expert because I've worked in this industry for 15 years. I've seen the transformation from, you know, paper charting all the way to this complex AI and all of these different conversations. I've kept abreast of the regulatory, requirements to be a nurse, to practice in healthcare, because that is what I do every day. So you can never take my 15 years of nursing experience
Mhm.
against a lawyer who's been in the healthcare quote unquote field for 5 or 10 years and think that they're better than me. Why? Because not only do I have this legal mind that I've been trained to do, and I've passed the bar and I've done all those things, but I also have this clinical mind. And so it's very easy for me to navigate some of these challenges a lot quicker than it is for others. And so again, we just need a marketing overdue, or uh, just a redo, because people just see us as this simple, sometimes I feel like they feel like and there's nothing wrong with being a certificate nurse, right? Because there was a time
Mhm.
when that was all you needed. But it's like they're stuck in the 40s and the 20s and 30s, as if like we just graduated from high school, went to a hospital and got our certificate and started working. And that's all that we've done. They don't take our bachelor's, our master's, our PhDs, our DNP. They don't take those into consideration and feel that we're prepared to lead or to serve or to do things beyond patient care.
That is so true. Until you said it, I didn't recognize everything that I do as a nurse.
Mhm.
I didn't recognize because when you're a critical thinker, when you have gained your critical thinking skills,
Mhm.
you don't truly think through the process. It comes fast and you just do.
Yep. Yep.
So I never thought about all of the hats that we wear as nurses, and they do. Even society, even hospitals that we work for, they minimize us to just the people who push pills. Instead, we're the people who talk to the doctors, and sometimes the doctors have no idea what's going on with their patients.
Yep.
And we're interpreting their vital signs, their signs and symptoms, and we're relaying that message over to these
Mhm.
doctors. And we're advocating for our patients sometimes, so much so because our doctors don't believe some of our patients. We have to step in and be their advocates.
And sometimes the doctors are also overwhelmed, right? And so we have to
Mhm.
simplify things and say, "Hey, this is what it is and this is what we got going on, and can you do X, Y, and Z?" Right? Sometimes we have to really target our ask
Mhm.
based off of what they need to know so that they can make a very acute decision, because they don't have time to go through the whole chart and figure out their history and all those kind of things. And I feel like I hone that skill working on a cardiac unit where this patient may have all of these other things going on. They may be on dialysis. They may, have uncontrolled diabetes. But guess what? They're on a cardiac unit, and what we need to focus on is their
Your
cardiac
heart. Mhm.
issues, and identifying that. And if that is no longer an issue, then they need to get off this unit, right?
Mhm.
And so I think what most nurses who really struggle with prioritizing or communicating with physicians is that they just are too wordy, and they think that physicians have all of the time in the world to process the words that they're saying to them and not make acute decisions. And so communication, and that's something you also learn in the OR, right? Like, I'm only going to
Mhm.
give you what you need so that you can make a good decision so that we can move on to the next thing, and then we can debrief later. Like, we can talk about
Mhm.
everything else later, but in this moment I need to know if we want to stop the bleeding or we need to call, someone in to help. Is this an emergency? Do I need to bring the crash cart? Like, you got to get really, yes, really specific in your ask, which I helps, again, physicians make, or nurse practitioners, providers, PAs, whoever, make very acute decisions based off the knowledge that they need to know. That's, I think, the challenge with being a new nurse or being a nurse that just really has a problem with communication.
Mhm.
And so
I
I never
can
had an issue with physicians being upset that I called because they knew I was going to get right to the point. Like, I
Mhm.
wasn't going to, I was like, look, this is what happened. This is what we need. Can you help me? Or who should I call?
Exactly. Even my preceptors, when, they're afraid to talk to the surgeons, I'm like,
Yeah.
look, you just have to say it as matter of fact as possible. And it's for the benefit of the patient. You
Mm-hmm.
can't really care about how someone's going to feel about it because
Yes.
it's about safety.
Mm-hmm.
But they're
Mm-hmm.
so scared because, they haven't grown into their nursing voice yet. So everybody has
Yeah.
to find their nursing voice where they feel like they can speak up for themselves, for their patients, even for your employees, because our scrub techs are our babies.
Mm-hmm. And you have to protect them. Protect them. I think that the fear of speaking with surgeons. I used to work when I first started. I worked with a black surgeon. He was really amazing, but he would be like, "Don't say the word uh-oh." And then guess what? I was just like, "Uh-oh." Like, and he was like, "Cuz the person could be like in twilight, and so you don't know if they're fully awake and you don't want it to seem like it was like you made a
Make a
mistake." So
mistake.
like I would just drop something and I'd be like, "Uh-oh." And he'd be like, "Yo, you got to." So like it took me forever to stop saying, like, he would just be looking at me like, "Are you stupid?" Or and I was just like, "I promise you I'm not slow. I'm really
Like, who says uh-oh?
like, just and I that is not even in my vocabulary, but I was so nervous that I just could not get my nerves together, and so eventually I just had to, like, get over that bad habit, and then we were great together, and, I wasn't his absolute favorite, but he would tolerate me. I had
Mhm.
a few other surgeons I was their absolute favorite. I laughed at all their jokes. They were just absolutely amazing. We had great relationships. Like,
They
it was
play great music.
yes, all of the things. And so I think that that is something that we just have to learn. Like, you're going to stumble. You're going to say words that they're not going to be happy to hear. They're going to question you. They're going to push you, but eventually when you do find your voice, like, you're never going to find your voice unless you use it, right? Unless
Mhm.
you practice, unless you say the things that need to be said. Stumble over it, make a mistake, have to go back and pull up and say, "Oop, I got to call you back because I didn't pull that, lab, or I'm not sure." But stand on, like, literally you have to stand on business because eventually you'll become so good that they know that they can call you for anything. So they're
Mhm.
running behind, they're running, late, or they need something very specific that they know that only you can get. They'll begin to trust you a lot more because they know that y'all have that open line of communication.
Yes. So, what was the point? So you 15 years as a nurse, but 3
Yeah.
years in the nursing world until you became a lawyer. What
Mhm.
made you go into the field of law that you did?
So becoming a lawyer, like, I really wanted to work for the Department of Health and Human Services before the Affordable Care Act came out because I knew that we all needed more access. Like, the biggest challenge in healthcare was people who were uninsured, right? Having a
Mhm.
large homeless population around your hospital decrease your revenue and decrease your ability to care for everyone else in the community. And so if we expanded access to care, then we would be able to continue to build hospitals and healthcare systems in all neighborhoods and not just in the wealthier places. And so I thought that, getting in the room and having those conversations would help push that agenda forward. The Affordable Care Act kind of passed, I think, a little bit either while I was in law school or right after. And of course, it's been restricted and stripped and all of the
Mhm.
things. But in the moments where it was expanded and in the places where it has been expanded, we've seen great outcomes. And so that was my passion, is just to, like, I grew up and didn't, what, there were times that I didn't have health insurance, and the impact of that was real. And the impact of that on children, on mothers, on, those with disabilities, on those who are impoverished. Like, it's a huge impact to not have access to care. And
Mhm.
so that was kind of my goal, was like, I want to work for them. And that just never happened. Like, I've applied, and getting in the government isn't the easiest thing. It's a long, arduous process, and I just never kind of made it through. And so then I was like, okay, what else could I do to potentially kind of still help professionals? And so that's kind of when I got into my own business. I did a little bit of malpractice, and then I started doing business things. And then 2020 came, and I revamped and revised my entire
Mhm.
business. And then once I did that, that is when, now what people see as this, like, oh, flourishing thing, they think automatically that it's always been there. And I'm like, no, I had to build this from zero. Like, I had no clients, I had no opportunities, I had no social media presence, no website.
Mhm.
Like, I literally built this from scratch. And so, yeah, for me, it's definitely been something where I've had to just figure it out, and use the skills that I've had as a nurse, and my communication skills, and my access to information and analyzing, to just build the business to be where it is.
So, what's one tip that you would give nurses who decide they want to become an entrepreneur as far as making their way into their field? What business tips would you give them?
I always tell people to build the brand as you're building the business, right? Some people just want to open up shop and say, "Hey, I'm here. Like, I need clients." But you
Mhm.
have to build the brand. And again, that is the power of social media, and that's the power of relationships and partnerships. Sometimes your old employer could be your first client. That is through speaking engagements, through writing, through blog posts. Like, there's so many ways to build your brand, because what you think your business is going to be may not be what people are really asking for. And so
Mhm.
sometimes people will invest all of their time and their money into this one idea, but they never even tested to see if the idea was going to generate any revenue.
Mhm.
And I think that that's the hardest part, is when you're stuck to an idea, and you're very comfortable, and you're just like, this is going to work. And then you launch and nothing happens. Now you're discouraged, and like, you swear off entrepreneurship. And so I think, entrepreneurship is about growing and pivoting and learning new skills and building new relationships and going towards the path of least resistance. I think that sometimes nursing and just healthcare professionals in general are so used to having so much resistance that they feel if they push through, that they'll get the reward on the other side. But that's not true with entrepreneurship. You kind of got to
Mhm.
swim where where the business is flowing, right? I think there were elements of my business that I assumed would grow a lot faster, and it just didn't. And so I had to eliminate those things. Like, I just knew, like, people were asking for this. People said they were interested in it. I created it and it flopped. Do I stick to it and keep going with it, or do I just
Mhm.
take my L and keep it moving? It's hard to take an L. It's hard, especially publicly, when you have a platform and you're saying, I launched this thing, or I'm offering this new tool, and it doesn't work out the way you think, but you got to keep it moving. And so, if you're building the brand, you're going to be receiving feedback, and people are going to be able to tell you for free whether this is going to work or not, whether this is a great idea or not, whether they need this or not. And you take that feedback and you reinvest that into the business, and then you kind of build from there. And so I think that people try to build in silence, and build in a silo, and build behind a
Mhm.
door. And when they open the door, they expect to be a fanfare. And when no one's there, now it's like, okay, what do I do now? And it's like you're starting from scratch.
Mhm. So, I'm going to do an icebreaker because we're nearing the end of
Yeah.
our episode. And so, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Whatever pops to the front of your mind, that's what you say, okay?
Okay.
So, what is one thing you can't live without?
My phone. It's sad.
That's
Addicted.
everybody.
It's addicted. It's crazy.
It's okay. You're an influencer. You're doing so much. You have a business. You got babies.
Mhm.
You
Just
need your
attached.
phone.
It's like, even when I try to, like, plug it up and put it in another room, I'm like, "Oh, I need the authentication code." Like, I can't even
Uh-huh.
let it go like, there used to be times where you really could put it away, and now it's like you can't, because everything is tied to your phone.
Mhm. If you could choose one person to sit with for valuable tips, who would it be? Famous or not famous?
I think I would sit with um, Sheila Johnson Lee. She's owner. Like I want to sit with a billion. I think that's her name. Sheila. No, Sheila Johnson. I think her last name is Lee too. But she is like she used to be the co-owner of BT.
Mm-hmm.
And she owns the Salamander, and she has all of these investments. And she took her divorce settlement and ran with it, and got herself into rooms that people never thought that she could be in, and into conversations and deals that most people would never have the opportunity to do so. And so
Mm-hmm.
really just trying to understand her mindset and her foresight to understand what steps to take to kind of get to the next level.
Okay. I'm going to look into her.
Hmm.
What is your go to book for perseverance?
Ooh, it's a book called Ikigai, Iki. Let me see, GAI. I think that's what it's called. IKI, yeah, GAI, and it's the Japanese secret to a long and happy life. After I read
Hmm.
that book, it really helped me shift my mindset again towards the path of least resistance. I was so pressured, like pressuring myself to go one way, and this
Hmm.
book is like all of these people are living these happy lives by kind of just going with the flow and doing these things. And I'm super type A, which is not necessarily helpful sometimes, and that book really helped me just shift my perspective on like I can do this and I am going to do this, but it may not look like how I think.
Okay. And the last question is, what is your favorite song right now?
My favorite song right now,
Hmm.
um, I think hold on, I have like a playlist that I play every single morning, and this one song that I play nonstop has kind of kept me going, and it's by David Michael Wyatt, and the song is called Prosper. I used to play it every day, and then like I stopped for a while, and it just wasn't good. And like even if I don't listen to it fully, if I play it in the background every single day, I always feel like my mindset is
Hmm.
positive enough for me to get through another day.
Okay. So, ending off, I have a few questions.
Yeah.
So, we've seen in media and even in person things that could put one's license in jeopardy.
Mm-hmm.
What tips would you give new nurses or nursing nurses now on how to remain compliant?
Know your policies. I think that a lot of people listen to anecdotal conversations, talk from either preceptors or other nurses or online, and they shape their thought process around what other people are saying versus what's actually on paper. People have this fear of losing their license, and I can guarantee it's a lot more difficult to lose your nursing license than most people think. And I think, yes, in the public eye, it feels like everyone's getting their license taken, but it's far from true. There may be people who may be called into the board to have conversations or discussions about their practice, which is that's the board's role. But nobody's walking around taking nursing licenses, right? People wouldn't become nurses if that was the case. And so I tell people, like, you need to know your own policies, what's expected from you, when you should be charting, what you should be charting. And if there's ever a chart review, you need to listen and change your practices, because sometimes people get so stuck in their practice that even when they get feedback, they don't change because they feel like, okay, well, this is how it's always done, or my preceptor told me that this is how they do it. Versus the person in quality pulling you to the side saying, hey, this note just got us a kickback from Medicaid or
Hmm.
Medicare because we didn't fulfill the documentation requirements. Take that feedback and change your behavior versus seeing it as a negative thing. Like, this is a patient's life and their future, because what we document now may not impact them now, but when they go somewhere else, if we don't document the right things, they may not qualify for certain services, they may not be able to get access, or they may not be able to show that they were complaining about this issue because we failed to document it because we didn't feel that it was important. So I think that the way that we look at documentation is so selfish, like it's very
Mm-hmm.
much about us and not about the patient.
I love that you said that because I was in long-term care management for a little
Mhm.
while and I was trying to change how they were documenting because I'm used to being on the floor side, and my
Mhm.
preceptor, she really honed in on make sure that you document, because if you know
Yeah.
you didn't document it, you didn't do it. So
Mhm.
be thorough. So
Yeah.
I was always thorough in my documentation, but when I went to this facility, the nurses weren't thorough in documentation, the
Mhm.
CNAs weren't thorough in their documentation, and it took a while for me to change and shift them into even meeting like 95% of their documentation being done.
Yeah, it's like I'm just really surprised at how casual some people can be because they just think like it's not like people take care of patients and they're okay with that, but they just don't think that the other thing, the turns, the feeding, the
Mhm.
refusals are important. But it is because it speaks to other things later. And again, if I'm trying to qualify to get my family member in a facility or to get them some type of care and you haven't documented it, it definitely impacts them and it impacts how we get paid.
Mhm. Yes. So that is nearing the end of this episode. I really want to say I thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, my
You did not
pleasure.
have to do it, but you did.
Oh, I'm grateful. I'm always grateful for the opportunity to connect with other nurses and to share my advice because I think that in the midst of social media and all the things that are happening, there's a lot of bad advice out there.
Mhm.
So I don't take it lightly that, you give me an opportunity to share some good advice.
So I really do appreciate you.
Yeah.
And where can we find you?
Yeah, so I'm your nurse lawyer on all social media platforms. I'm mostly on LinkedIn and Instagram, sharing my insight, my thoughts, my life, little glimpses of the things that I do to get through every day. I think that it's so easy sometimes to look at people and think they have it all together, and baby, I don't at
Mhm.
all. My child was actually knocking on the door, and I just ignored him for like, I like, please, you hear me talking,
It's okay. My
and
fiance is
so
out
it's
here
like.
driving around with my baby right now.
Right? Like, it's just it's a lot that goes on. Like, I'm just like anybody else. I just have built a public platform that people can kind of use. And so I encourage people to share their own thoughts and their own voice and, get into these platforms, maybe not even as a way to monetize, but just to take up space. Nurses deserve to take up space, even if it's not a 30, 50, 100,000, like your goal isn't to have 100,000 followers, but your goal may be to educate your community, your friends, your family, and you have the right to do that. So feel comfortable with educating and informing others with good information because more good information is needed um, all over in every in every sense of the word.
Well, all right. I am so appreciative. I learned so
Oh
many things
yeah,
during this episode. I took so many notes that I'm going to take
yeah,
back to me attempting to build my own business as a nurse.
yes.
And I hope that you all listen to this episode and you enjoy it because she gave so much to us today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad I could be here.
And you're welcome. Thank you. You have a great day. Well, you have made it to the end of the episode. This is your host, Keisha of the Evolved Nurse Podcast. I would really like to say to my student nurses that you got this. Remember what is over that obstacle called nursing school. If you have any questions for us, email us at theevolvednurse@gmail.com or simply just add us on Instagram at the Evolved Nurse. I hope that you all have a great day. And that is concluding this episode. Have a great day.